Welcome to the Alpha One Armory. I'm Herman Morris from Alpha One Tactical, here for another episode of Firearms 101. So now that we've gone over the most common types of handguns, their parts, and their action types, let's go over how they function. Pretty much everyone understands the general idea as to how all firearms work. There's a cartridge in a chamber, that cartridge is detonated, and the explosion propels the bullet down the barrel and out of the muzzle. Pretty simple, right? Well, in this section, I want to briefly go over how this process occurs in the most common handguns that we've discussed so that you're aware of the differences between them. Let's start again with our trusty revolver. The way they work is by unlocking and opening the cylinder and loading the cartridges into it. Once full, we can close the cylinder and the gun is loaded and ready to go. At this point, all you need to do is pull the double action trigger and the hammer will cock back and then release, which strikes the primer in the cartridge, setting it off and propelling the bullet into the barrel and out the muzzle. We can do this as many times as there are rounds in the cylinder, and we can even do it in single action if we want by simply cocking the hammer manually first and then pulling the trigger. Once we're out of live rounds, we can open the cylinder back up and depress the plunger to release the empty shells. And we're ready to do the process all over again. There isn't much to that, right? But it's important to note a few things in general and a few things that are specific to revolvers. Let's talk about physics for a minute. You all probably remember the following law from science class in high school. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. When a gun is discharged, the explosion propels the bullet in the cartridge out the path of least resistance, namely the barrel, with a lot of force. There is an equal amount of force that is exerted in the opposite direction, and that's what we experience as recoil. Okay? In the case of revolvers, all of the force from the detonation of a cartridge in the form of gases is expended in and across the barrel, and also some escapes out of this cylinder gap. Okay, depending on how powerful the cartridge is, the amount of gas coming out of the cylinder gap can range from minimal to extreme. That's why it's important to note that the way one holds a revolver is different than a semi-auto pistol, so just as not injure your support side thumb. Okay. It's also important to note that because that explosion is not harnessed for anything other than propelling the bullet, even though some does escape out the cylinder gap, revolvers tend to have more felt recoil than semi-autos, all things being equal. And I'll show you why in a minute. So let's jump to talk about semi-autos. Okay, so unlike revolvers, the ammunition is fed via a magazine that fits inside of the grip of the gun. And then when one racks the slide for the first time on its way forward, the slide pushes the cartridge that's on top of the magazine into the chamber, usually via a feed ramp, and there it's in a position where it can be discharged when the trigger is pulled and either the hammer strikes the firing pin, pushing it into the primer, or in the case of striker fired pistol, the striker impacts the primer. In either case, the powder in the cartridge ignites and the explosion propels the bullet down the barrel. And here's where we find the most significant differences in function between revolvers and semi-autos. Unlike a revolver, a semi-auto is designed to use the force of the recoil to both expel the spent case and to chamber another round from the magazine. And the way that this works is simple physics again. Since the slide is on rails on top of the frame of the gun, and there's someone holding it firmly, when firing it, right, the slide becomes the path of least resistance and the inertia pushes it back. The extractor then ejects the spent case out of the ejection port. The spring attached to the slide via the guide rod then pushes it forward back into battery, and so doing chambering another round if there is one. All right? So most semi-autos function in this way in general, and it's one of the main reasons why semi-autos tend to have less felt recoil, since it's harnessed to work the action. Now, the two most common types of gas systems in semi-auto pistols that you'll come across are recoil-operated designs, such as in this Glock, in which the barrel is locked to the slide when in battery. This is necessary for safety purposes when firing more powerful cartridges, say 9mm and above, and also the way the barrel and the slide lock together can vary between different makes and models of pistols, but the concept is generally the same. The other common gas system is the blowback operated action like this Walter 22. It's a similar design except that the barrel isn't actually locked to the slide. It just sits on top and it's pushed forward by a spring. When the pistol is fired, the chamber pressure itself is what pushes the slide back. And this type of design is only found on pistols that are chambered in low-powered cartridges such as this 22 long rifle. Well, I hope this helps you better understand how handguns work. We've now set the stage for discussing ammunition. So stay tuned for the next episode where you'll learn the different parts that make up a cartridge and how they work. I'll see you then.